Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I don't typically title my messages, but if I were to title this one, it might be something like When God Wrestles Us into Our True Name. So if you're not aware, this is my portion. Even though my birthday is tomorrow, in 1965, this was the portion after December 7th. So, needless to say, I had fun with it. I always do. It's one of the most messianic, forward-looking passages in the book of Genesis. And God practically grabs you by the collar and says, we need to talk about who you really are. Yaakov is the main character in this portion, and he goes from fear to struggle to wounding to blessing and to reconciliation. And one of the most revealing passages in the Old Testament about Yeshua is in this portion. And I think it's fitting for this congregation to hear that piece of it at this time. And I should be able to remind you when we get to that slice of it. It is concerning a man who is both God and not God, wrestling with Jacob, and Jacob turning him into Israel. So, like I said, there's a lot of sword-level, deep mystery stuff. A sword is a biblical mystery. Paul tells us that over in 1 Corinthians 15, when he says, behold, I show you a sword, a mystery. So, the one who meets us in the dark, he wounds us in order so that he can heal us, and then he renames us, he reconciles brothers, and he leads us back into the land to begin to worship. So, I've been promising you we would do the Peshat level, so I'm going to do that pretty quickly through the whole portion, just to give you all of the background information, because we're doing the whole portion this year because we're in the 6th year. Jacob sends messengers to Esau in Genesis 32, 4 through 23. He hears that Esau, his brother Edom, is coming, and fear grips him. Grips him pretty hard. We're going to look at that a little deeper in a second. So he divides his camp there. Remember that place where he was, we talked about it last week, is Mahanaim. All right? The double encampment. So we saw a convergence of his camp and God's camp, and now we're seeing that his camp is splitting in two. So it says, Vayira Yaakov me'od. Jacob was very afraid. That's 32:8. And then 4 verses later, he says, Hatzileni na. Please deliver me. Hatzileni. That is from the same root as Natsal. Snatch me away from this. Take me up. If you don't know that, that word Natsal is rapture. In verses 25 through 33, it's nighttime, and he's left alone. That's what I was actually trying to find in the scroll, and I never found it. I found roughly where it should have been, but I couldn't take time to find it. He was left alone, and he wrestles with a man. And whoever that man was, that man walked up to him and picked a fight. I can't get over that. You know, I wrestled a lot when I was a kid. My brother broke my collarbone when I was about 13 years old from wrestling. I got one student this year that I want to wrestle with. I don't know what it is. I just want to tangle with him. And he knows it. He wants to tangle with me. We can't do it. It's not proper, but it's funny. So it doesn't surprise me that this is my portion. Because whoever this guy is who walks up behind Jacob, taps him on the shoulder, and then does that. Starts to grab him and throw him around a little bit. And they wrestled all night long. I wrestled once for about an hour with a buddy of mine in the Navy and I had to break his rib to get out from under him. Jacob's hip was snapped. I broke a rib. I went all the way back to Adam. he receives a new name from that man, Israel. And in 33, 1 through 17, he actually reconciles with Esau, who 21 years ago wanted to murder him. And you find out later, the reconciliation is tepid. They decide not to kill each other there, but their children have been fighting ever since. And we see that in our Haftarah portion. In chapter 34, we have the incident of Dinah, his daughter. Jacob's sons respond violently to what their sister did and what that got her involved in, and they get Jacob in trouble. In chapter 35, and here is the cause of all that has been going on in the house of Jacob. God calls him to Beit El. Remember, we talked about that last week. He's got to go back to the house of God. He's got to go back to the house of God. Not in the sense of going to the temple or a synagogue, but in the sense of returning to where God called him and for the purpose for which he called him, which was to carry on the Abrahamic priesthood. Right? He reaffirms his name there, calling him Yisrael. Rachel dies, giving birth to Binyamin. And if you don't remember, Rachel, his beloved wife, is the one who brought idolatry into the camp. Way back when she asked for the dudaim of Leah's son. Dudaim, if you don't know, is a plant that was used in potions, witchcraft, visions, sexual rites. And she asked for that, thinking that would help her get pregnant. That's pagan stuff. All right? And so she dies there because of Jacob pronouncing her death. He didn't know it. But he said, whoever's got the idols, he'll perish. He did not know it was Rachel. Y'all remember that, right?
Yep.
Okay. So God is reaffirming his name here, and then we see Esau's genealogy in chapter 36. And that in those names, you hear a lot of names you're going to hear later on in the Old Testament. So they're not there by accident. You guys know that. Right. Remember, you read the Bible when you were younger and did all those names and you just skipped over it. I don't need all this. Then you find out, oh my gosh, there's messages in these names. So it's time to deep dive. Genesis 32, we're backing back up to the beginning of it, 8 through 13. This is where VaYishlakh lo. He was afraid and distressed. That's what it says in English. Yirah is fear. Yatzar is tribulation. He was tribulated, to put it in a wonky term, just to kind of make a point. This is a hint that tribulation comes from brothers who reject the blessing and the birthright. Did not Esau do that? He rejected the blessing and the birthright, and then he turned around and persecuted Jacob. He does it over and over and over again and again and again throughout the scriptures. Our Haftarah portion shows us that. That's why we read from Obadiah. When the Torah says of Yaakov, he was afraid and distressed, that's a double, it's a repetition of a similar emotion, right? He was more than just afraid. He was pressed in on both sides. That's what tribulation actually means. A straight, dire straits, great group, by the way, but they're naming themselves after a narrow passage that's hard to get through in a ship, right? So there is the physical attack of Esau that he fears, and there is the spiritual attack of tribulation, him being jealous of losing the blessing, losing his identity, and he, of course, threatens to attack his brother. That Jacob doesn't know how Esau feels at this point. So this is the seed of later tribulation. It's not just chaos in the end times. It's pressure that is applied to Israel because of the brothers rejecting the birthright. If you don't know this, all the nations around Israel right now that cause them all kinds of trouble, all of those are his brothers. It's Edom and his descendants. It's Moab and their descendants. They're kin to Abraham. It's Ishmael and his descendants, and they are another son of Abraham. So all of the nations, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, all of the nations right around Jordan, all the nations right around Israel are brothers. And that is the heart of the tribulation. It tickles me when Americans think it's all going to take place right here in America. You ain't that special. All those children rejected the birthright, right? They assimilated with the nations around them. They took on the worship. Instead of worshiping God the way Abraham did, all of Abraham's other children decided to worship God the way the rest of the world did outside of Israel. Esau was a brother, but he rejected the blessing, and he wanted to stop the blessing because he wanted to kill Jacob. Throughout history, there have been false brothers rising up, people who claim to be descended from Abraham, either spiritually or physically, and they rise up, they claim to belong to God, but they persecute God's children, Abraham's children. If you are persecuting Jews, I don't care what you find Jews doing. And here's the thing, is they find a tiny, tiny 1% of Jewish people doing something, and they label all Jews evil, and they say, we need to extinguish them. And that's going on right now. I'm hearing it from prominent Christians who are calling for the destruction of Jewish people because all Jews are evil. Because, yes, there's one or two evil Jews, and I'm speaking a little bit in hyperbole as well, but there's one or two evil Jews that they can name that are doing horrible things, so we're all bad. That is the spirit of anti-Messiah. That's exactly what it is. To destroy the Messiah-bringing nation. Rome did it. They claimed the blessing even though they weren't children of the blessing. The Roman church system behaves like Esau. They call them the brother of Jesus themselves, but they oppose Israel, they oppose the Torah, and they do not, their Messiah is not Jewish. They wouldn't dare put something Jewish on their Messiah, their Christ, right? They wouldn't call him that. As a matter of fact, Jewish people think Jesus is a Greek. That's how they proceeded and have for 1,700 years. I'm talking about unbelieving Jews, obviously. They reject Abrahamic worship. They move the Sabbath. They move the feast. They married into Israel. They will marry into Ishmael, I should say. And they stand with the enemies of Israel. I said if I ever do my doctorate, I would do it on where the Jews went when Constantine took over, because they had to go somewhere. And it's hanging out there in the academic world. Nobody has ever done a study that I know of. At least when James Parks wrote his seminal book on Judaism and Christianity back in about the 1910s and 20s, that's where I got the idea for it, because the study had not been done. Where did the Jewish people who believed in Yeshua go? I have my suspicions. But similarly, fast forward 2,000 years, and the Pope signed an agreement with Hitler. In 1933, Pope Pius XI. He was actually functioning. The guy that was doing it was Eugenio Pacelli, who becomes Pope Pius XII. I don't know if you know that. They take on a different name. Signed what's it called, and I should have asked Eva how to pronounce it. Reichskonkordat. How'd I do? Reichskonkordat. It looks like a concordance, joining together of the Reich with the Pope. And that's why the Jews were so easily persecuted by the Catholic Church in Germany and Poland. I met a survivor, a Polish Jew. We did. A woman who was knocked on the head by a priest who had a cross around his neck. Took that iron hanging cross around his neck and hit her on it. She was 9 years old, walking down the street during the right before the Germans got to Poland. They were already Poland was itching to persecute the Jewish people, and so she's walking down the street. And he clocks her on, broke her scalp open with that darn iron thing hanging around his neck. That contract, by the way, between the Pope and Hitler basically is what legitimized Hitler to the world. Lots of people were questioning him, but when the Pope did that, oh, must be wonderful. Pope met him. God met him. That's how they think. But let's not forget there are Protestant daughters of Rome. We learned that in Revelation 17. The daughters of the harlot are the Protestants, and they did some of the same exact things. People think Protestants are there's no blood on their hands, but they don't realize Luther, Calvin. The only one that I don't know of, I don't know that John Wesley's followers ever did it. I don't think they did, but Luther and Calvin, which is the predominant thrust of Protestantism, persecuted people, killed them, because they didn't agree with them. The English church put John Bunyan in prison for trying to preach. All right? Killed William Tyndale. Burned him at the stake for doing what I did, translating the Bible so people could understand it then. Burned him at the stake. Luther burned down the city full of people because they were Protestants but not Lutheran. So he didn't physically go in like a match, but he gave his approval of it with the Catholic Church. Lutheran Protestants and Catholics went to an Anabaptist city and burned it to the ground. 100,000 people died. That's tribulation. Yeshua said we would go through it. Now, I'm not saying that people in Munster, that all of them were innocent because they weren't interpreting the scriptures 100% correctly. Nonetheless, you don't kill people in God's name. Amen. I don't care who you are. You don't kill people in God's name. And I'm telling you, that's how they did it. Esau will make a pact with Jacob when it's convenient for him. Jacob fears Esau. We have those twin verbs. He was afraid and distressed. It literally means that things were pressuring in on him. There are false brothers who love the name, but not the God behind the name. There's a systemic pattern where tribulation doesn't come from pagans. It's believer on believer. All right. Ephraim, where was I? Okay. The birthright is what Esau rejected, and that is the spiritual, redemptive, Abrahamic priesthood, which eventually gets given to Levi, right? Which has been changed to Yeshua in our day, right? Our covenant is marriage. We are a married bride, and at the same time a priesthood. But too many people today are committing adultery on Yeshua because they marry their faith that they get out of the Bible with every religion around them. The people today don't realize that that's what had been done, so they think they inherited a proper faith. That's what Roman Catholicism is, and I don't care how you excuse it. If you study the history of Roman Catholicism, it is a mixture religion. And Protestants think that because they protested that they broke away from it, but they still do papal. They submit to papal authority. Constantine changed the day of worship to Sunday. All the Protestants do that. Constantine changed Sukkot to Easter. All the Protestants do that. He changed Sukkot and Hanukkah to Christmas. All the Protestants do that, along with the rest of the pagan world. That's what cracked me up. It's Esau all over again. Especially when you consider that, like I said, both of those groups chased people down and killed them because they didn't agree with them, even though they were confessing Yeshua, Jesus, or whatever, Yasha. Jésus in French, Jesus in Spanish. I don't care where you went. They were confessing their name. Study the history. They were killed by brothers. Here's the good news, though. Yaakov is not wrestling to escape Esau, but to become a true man who can stand before Esau without fear. And we have too long fear in the Messianic community, in the community of faith. I have heard preachers because, when I was making the transition to this walk 35 years ago, I started asking preachers, and they admit, I pinned them down. I'm not the scholar then that I am now. I wasn't the scholar then that I am now, and I'm not puffing myself up. But I know a whole lot more now than I did 35 years ago. But I knew a lot for an average believer at 35 years ago when I was 22, 24 years old. And I would pin them down and get them to admit that the Trinity is bad language. Well, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. They're afraid. They live in fear. And of course, a big chunk of it is losing the money, and then losing the respect of the rest of the religious community, being called a heretic. They're afraid. God wants us to stand in front of false brethren who tried to usurp the birthright, who want to kill us, and actually just tell them the truth. And try to reconcile with them. That's when we just put it out on our webpage. Efforts to try to reconcile with both sides of the aisle. The Messianic Judaic side and the Christian side. Trying to get them to understand we're not here trying to be an enemy. We just want to walk in truth. That's it. Jews fled the Roman Empire because Tertullian, about 100 years after Constantine, finally imposed the death penalty. Pretty sure it was him. Finally imposed the death penalty on those who wouldn't stop observing the Sabbath. In the book of Obadiah, Israel is being attacked. They want to go through Edom, and Edom, Esau's children, will not let them go through. They stood in the crossroad. This is my portion. That's where I get my pen name from. Peret means crossroad, because that's what my surname in English means, crossroad. They'll stand with Israel. Esau will stand with Israel's enemies and persecute the Jewish people. Similarly, other people in walks of faith will stand alongside the enemies of Israel and persecute Jewish people. They'll stand alongside the enemies of spiritual Israel and persecute those who follow Yeshua. There are thousands of believers, but there are very few followers of Yeshua. There's a lot of people out there confessing his name, but there's very few of them who are walking as he walked. Like I said, everybody in both sides of the camp, Catholic and Protestant, they're following the popes. Jacob receives a new name, Yisrael, at the same time that he got an injury, a limp, a lifelong reminder that God's people do not conquer by force. But by clinging, not letting go of the one with whom we wrestle, with whom our flesh wrestles. Are you with me? It's a perfect image of flesh wrestling spirit. Because the man, if you haven't figured it out, that visited Jacob was a spirit being. And we're going to peel that onion here in a minute. Might be here in a while. When real tribulation comes, when the tribulation comes, it'll be because of false messiahs, false religion, false brothers, false world systems. It is clinging to the identity of Israel that is going to save people. And that's what the believing community doesn't realize. And they are rejecting the Jewish identity of Yeshua for the pagan one in large numbers. Clinging to the God of Jacob, the God of Israel, will cause you to stand through that tribulation. Of course, we know there's an escape beforehand for those who do that now. Right? Cling to him now. During the tribulation, the two prophets that everyone hears about, it's not reincarnated men, it's two Jewish men. And they're going to present Yeshua the Messiah through the lens of the Torah as Yeshua interpreted it. So this birthright that we inherit, by the way, this priesthood that we inherit, this spiritual priesthood that Peter said that we walk in, we don't get there sometimes in the easiest way. A lot of us were coerced into it. Some people were coerced into it by the Catholic Church and the Lutherans and the Calvinists. They were strong-armed into it, grew up in a household that made them believe it in a certain way, and they can't see the scriptures in clarity because of it. Are you with me? Yeah. So they have to wrestle with God. They walk away with a limp and walk away admitting who's wrong. That is a hard thing in the day that we live in the country that we live in. That is a hard thing for people to do. In the spiritual attitude, the way that people think today, it is so hard for very few people can really just say, I was wrong. Am I right? Yes. And until you do that, you're not limping. You're not identified as Israel. Today in Israel, they do it wrong, or Jewish people do it wrong. They won't eat about a third of a cow because of the tradition that's created out of this. All they're not supposed to eat is that inner, I think it's flank steak. Isn't flank steak where that blood thing is? You know, don't you? Yeah. And that's inside the thigh, right? The back thigh, right? That's all that's customary not to eat. It's not a commandment, it's a Jewish custom, but they have taken, like I said, the whole back half of the cow and they reject it. They reject a lot of it. Okay? But it's the point is that it's a perpetual memorial of Jacob, the identity of Jacob. So I wish the Jewish people go back to it just being that flank steak. Because then it would be a clear message. A sensible message to the rest of the world of what it is. That limp proves that now he's walking in the blessing. Weakness, admitting you're weak as a human, proves not being some super strong spiritual. I've heard preachers say, I had one that wanted to hire me, and I kind of wanted to take the job. But he wanted to hire me, and one of the things that drove me away from it and made me decide, nope, I'm going Messianic, is he said, I've got the victory. I'm walking in victory, and I'm thinking, And I had seen things that told me, you know, it was pride. Thinking he's got it all figured out. The moment that you think you have everything figured out and you're not gonna fall, you are setting yourself up for a fall that you won't even perceive.
Yeah.
Weakness is good for us. God said so. He told Paul, "Dilech," we sing it every week, and there's a reason we do it every week. It's joyful. "Dilech chazdim." My compassion is sufficient for you, because my strength is perfected in weakness. Not in your strength. My strength is perfected in your weakness. And Paul said it in another place. When I am weak, then I am strong. In other words, when I admit that I need God, then I'm strong. One of those old Pentecostal hymns just went through my mind. I need thee every hour. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
You got to surrender to God in your weakness. And the rabbi that taught me, although he went astray after about 6 or 8 years after I graduated, he used to say something that I like: admit it and quit it. You're weak, you're foolish, you do stupid things. Admit it and stop doing it. And you stop doing it by admitting it and then clinging to his power. The ones who truly inherit the birthright, it's never smooth. You're not perfect. You're not unscarred like Esau, who was big and burly and strong and never had any problems. And all we saw with Jacob was one problem after another. Esau's life is, he's just rocking and rolling, right? That's not the blessing. People think that's the blessing. People today are walking in Esau's right now blessing. Do you realize that? Microwave faith. I want it instantly, and I want it hot, and I want it right now. The true heirs are the one who walk with a limp. You've touched heaven in the nighttime. You've struggled with God. Don't let him go until I understand. Don't let go. I'm not letting you go until I understand you. Until your name is no longer one who overthrows or is tricky, trying to get it by hook and crook, but one who contends with God, struggles with God, and also is a prince with God, and prevails over flesh. Some of us got here the wrong way, but nonetheless we got here. There are believers in all of those faiths right now. They're true believers. They're there. We want them to come out. God wants them to come out. That's the whole purpose of our publishing a website and trying to reach people. The blessing people are seeking, they don't realize it belongs to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the blessing you want. It's a life shaped by the Torah as Yeshua taught it. It's a life filled with the Spirit of Messiah, which is Yeshua, the Son of God. And it is wrapped up in Sabbath keeping and feast keeping and people who are priests in his kingdom. So the limp becomes your credential. It's your calling card. The scar tissue is like a signet ring. It identified Jacob from that time forward. Not to fear Esau, who stands in the way of people getting into the promised land. Do you realize that? That's what Esau did. They stood in the way of Israel getting through so they could get away from the people behind them and get to the promised land. Jacob prays the first real intercessory prayer in 32:12. Hatzileni na. Deliver me, please. That's what na means. It doesn't literally mean please, but that's what it implies. It echoes Hoshea na. Hosanna is how it gets translated. Hoshea na. Save us, please. Ben David, have mercy on me. Son of David, have mercy on me. It's that kind of plea that Jacob is making. That kind of fear of failure, fear of losing God's blessing, drives us to the feet of the Messiah. Chapter 32, 25 through 33, this is the heart of the portion. It's Jacob wrestling with an issue, a man. I wish the messenger looked a little bit more Judean, but it's good. After he struggles with whoever this is, he says, Iti Elohim, Panim El Panim, I have seen God face to face. And this is the limp of Jacob. Lama zenti shalishmi. He asked that messenger that name. What is your name? And that messenger said, Lama zenti shalishmi. In other words, you should know who I am. Jews will tell you that he didn't know God's name at the time, that Abraham didn't know God's name. That's baloney, because the word says that Abraham called on the name of Yahweh. They knew his name. Abraham saw that same messenger in a vision. Abraham met that same messenger with two other messengers beside him, had dinner with him, washed his feet. Jacob should have known that. Jacob was too busy with Jacob's stuff and not the faith of Abraham. Lama saying, why are you asking my name? Why are you asking? Why do you not understand who I am? It's effectively because name is reputation. Why don't you know who I am? What my character is? That's the limp. Israel's children, that man's children. That's not the man, but that's an imagination of what he might look like. But Jacob's children today still have that spiritual limp. They don't know who God is. They don't know who this was that wrestled with Abraham. They don't know who visited Isaac. They don't know who's standing in the bush. Yes. It was Jewish people who told Cecil B. DeMille to just put a bush there because they don't understand this. It's a manifestation of God. God was still on his throne. He temporarily manifested himself in a man-like being that is in what we call an angel. And Hosea figured that out and writes about that. Then he's talking about Jacob, Hosea is, and he says he wrestled with an angel. So that tells us there was never any doubt in my mind, without the passage in 32 saying that it was an angel, of who it was. Are you with me? The Malach Yahweh, the messenger, the angel of Yahweh. That's what he wrestled with. Jacob didn't know that. But he understood afterward, I've seen the face of God. Do you see what I mean? He knew? He knew. It's a man who bears the name of the Father. Am I right? Father is a title. Jacob calls me Dad. But Jacob knows my name is Daniel Crouch. I was talking about my team. If Jacob needs me, Jacob needed help on buying a car, so I went and put my name on it. He bought that car in my name. He used my authority and my reputation to. Are you with me?
That's good.
That's what Yeshua did with God's name in a far bigger realm, obviously, but he for God's name and authority on earth.
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Indeed, that man, can I call that right-hand person a man for the sake of this conversation?
Right.
That man was a perfect representation of God on earth, and Jacob proves it. I have seen the face of God, but lived. Are you with me?
Yes.
And Hebrews 1 says it plainly. 1 through 4, basically. Let me get there off my notes. From of old Elohim spoke to our fathers by the prophets in many forms and in many ways. That's one of the ways.
Come on now.
Right there. And in these Acharit Hayamim Ha'ele, in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son. It's the same thing. Yeshua, you guys know this. This is a pre-manifestation of Yeshua.
Yes.
Yeshua showed up over and over and over again to Israel through the prophets. The Malach Yahweh. That's what Hosea and other passages define for us, that this was the messenger of Yahweh. But specifically, Hosea says this particular messenger was that messenger. Right? He shows up to the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua, and the judges. We know that because Manoah saw him.
Right.
And I think I'll get to that. I'm way off my notes, so just bear with me. Nope, let me back up just a tiny bit. It's the limb of Israel. They don't get it, and the proof is 1,000 years later, or roughly close to 1,000 years, 600, 700 years later, Manoah asked the same question of the same guy that showed up to Manoah's wife to tell him about Samson. And Manoah wasn't quite sure. And the wife clearly says, a man appeared unto me multiple times. Let's go see the man. I hope that man shows up again. That man shows up again. They say, can we sacrifice to you? That man says, no. Because it's not God.
Right.
But then they make the sacrifice because the man said, sacrifice to God anyway. He'll consume it. Right? They set up the sacrifice. That man ascends in the flame of that offering and consumes it. And then they say the same thing as Jacob. But Manoah asked a question. What's your name? And that messenger, that man said, Lama zeti shalishmi kifeli. Why do you ask my name? It is my secret, my wonder, my amazement. The identity of that man is the secret of the Bible. It's the secret of understanding who Yeshua really is.
Yeah, come on.
The Devar Yahweh. The Malach Yahweh from Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, all the way up to 1 Samuel. And then that guy's title flips to the word of Yahweh. Yahweh appeared again in Shiloh to Shmuel as the word of Yahweh, the word of the Lord, the word of Yahweh. So when someone stands there, some modern prophet stands there, the word of the Lord came to me. I'm like, they don't understand what happened. Over and over and over, that man was standing in front of those prophets 250 times in the prophets.
Come on now. 57.
Yahweh appeared to again in Shiloh, for Yahweh revealed himself to Samuel, the first of the prophets. Am I right? You guys know that.
Yes.
At Shiloh as the word of Yahweh. And of course, John 1 tells us, and the Word became a body and dwelt among us. The Word became a human being while God was still on his throne. Jacob's blown up hip. The socket was out of joint. That inner thigh muscle was injured. That's the place of generational strength. Do you remember when Abraham called his unnamed servant to go fetch a bride, which represents us, right? Put your hand on my thigh. Why? Because that's the strength of generations. He wanted to find a bride for Isaac because Abraham was about to die and he wanted to know that his son is going to have children to carry on the blessing. And he needs a proper bride, not a Canaanite woman, not just any person, but someone who will walk the faith of Abraham And that's exactly what Rivka did. She left Laban behind. She saw their corruption, and she wanted to go with this unnamed servant to go be an Abrahamite. Right? Israel will walk with the limb until Messiah restores the nations. They struggle with God. They still wrestle with God. They just don't realize it. They have said it in their Talmud, but they have said they won. That's the problem. Who wins in this one? Messenger does, right? But our Jewish religious leaders today say that they have won. We've defeated God. And they put those words in God's mouth. My children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. They don't realize that Yeshua is the Word, that Yeshua is that same entity that wrestled with Jacob. He is the perfect image of the Creator. They know that about that messenger. They describe it as Metatron. They used an actual Greek word. I think that's Greek. Meta is Greek, right? Anybody help me there? They called it Metatron. And they described it just exactly the way we describe that same entity, but we just call it the messenger of Yahweh and a pre-manifestation of Yeshua. But they understand it was God on earth, briefly, temporarily. They understand that. But they don't get that that's who Yeshua is. They don't get that the Word would be the Messiah. That the Messiah would be the Son of God, even though Psalm 2 said it, Proverbs 30 verse 4 said it. Moses sang about it. Yahweh has become my Yeshua. Today, the community of Esau believes in the God of Abraham with Israel, but they reject the priesthood. They say that they are the children of Abraham today. Esau does, Ishmael does. Today, they say that. And they think they worship him, and they've claimed it. They have done the same thing the rabbis have. They've named that moon rock at Mecca as having been placed there by Abraham and Ishmael. So they're claiming a link to the God of Abraham. Catholicism has done the same thing, but they have gone so far as to say that that God is gone and there's a new God. They've killed God. And they will tell you that God died. They will tell you that. I've had scholars, Catholic scholars, tell me that. Yes, God died. He's different now. Our Jewish people, when Yeshua showed up, and we talked about this on Thursday night in a Zoom call, our Jewish people, when Yeshua showed up, it's Hanukkah, it's this season. It's interesting that we're having this, and y'all know the fullness of this conversation that's been going on, right? That we're having this kind of conversation this time of year. Because it's this time of year when Yeshua says, I and my Father are echad. We are one. They, the rabbis, interpreted Yeshua as meaning he's calling himself God, and they wanted to kill him. And he said, for which of my miracles my wonders, feli? You catch that? For which of my wonders, feli, do you want to kill me? And they said, not because you're doing wonders, but because you call yourself God. Yeshua did not call himself God. And he proves it in the next verse. Why do you want to kill me? Because I said, I am the Son of God. When he said, I and my Father are one, he meant, because he gives us the definition of it, I am the Son of God. That should end the conversation. It doesn't, but it should. You got to be renamed. God said, Lo Yaakov, you are not Jacob. Ki im Yisrael, but with one who struggles with God. That's literally what that means. Im Yisrael. You are not Jacob, but Israel. But it's not just but Israel. Ki im Yisrael, but you are with Yisrael. In other words, you have become Yisrael. Jacob wrestles a man, but God gives him the name. Natural Israel is still Jacob. They behave like Jacob. They think like Jacob before he becomes Israel. Are you with me? They have reverted back to their flesh. They still limp spiritually. They think they have overcome God. Yeshua gives the final identity to Israel in Yokhanan 1, where we learn that Yahweh became the Word of God, became flesh, right? Yeshua says in that same chapter, you shall be called B'nai El Elyon, sons of the Most High God. So because Yeshua is his son, he makes us his sons. Yeah. Are you with me? And we have a struggle with our brother Esau, and that's what you see in chapter 33 is all the history of Esau, the families of Esau. Esau runs and embraces and kisses Jacob. He acts like he wants to reconcile, and there's tepid reconciliation, but later on, he's condemned in Obadiah 10 through 17, which is what we read from the Bema. But there's a prophecy about future violence. And at the end of the chapter of Obadiah, Ve'alu Moshe'im Behar Zion, deliverers will ascend Mount Zion. That is Moshe'im. That is Moshiach, which means Savior. God is literally, Yahweh is called Moshiach in the Old Testament. Yeshua is called Moshiach, Moshi'enu, our Savior, in the New Testament. But this is Moshi'im, plural, that shall ascend. We know that that is an ascent one day of those who are saved. Saved ones is what Moshi'im means, not just saviors, but those who are saved. Shall ascend God's mountain in a very physical sense, going to heaven. And at the same time, we are saviors in a junior commissioned role along with Yeshua to go out and try to reach the lost. Go into all the world and make Torah students out of every nation, teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you, and immerse them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Ruach HaKodesh. And we know that name to be Yahweh Yeshua HaMashiach. But we're going to go up. And we know that because we're going to return with him, and Zechariah affirms that. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, and Yahweh my God will come, and all the holy ones with him. Our last piece is 34 and 35, and this is the struggle with the flesh. I'll try to be brief. Dinah puts herself in moral danger because she wants to be like the Canaanites. She goes out. She's a rebellious teenage girl is what she is. She goes out dressed like the harlots around her. And she goes out and seeks a person who is not part of the family of Israel. Not worshiping God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Shimon and Levi, her brothers, they overreact and they're mad because the men receive her and they treat her like a harlot. And y'all, I don't need to get graphic about it, right? You know what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They commit deceit and bloodshed. They deceive those men and kill them and punish them. And that's what a lot of Messianic people do. They see their sister playing the harlot, and they go and get angry. Are you with me? and they overreact, and they drive people away from the Messianic walk because they're so mean and hateful. Are you with me? You got to be circumcised to be saved. That's effectively what the brothers did, isn't it? Be part of this family, you got to be circumcised. They laid the law on them and then they executed them. Are you getting what I'm doing? Do you see the images here?
Yeah.
And that's why God said, Ha'aleh Beit El, go up, ascend to the house of God. Go back to where I named you Jacob. Go back, or Israel, go back to where I called you. Go back to the house of God. Ve'asim ve'aseh shan mizbech. Go and build an altar. So finally, Jacob is not only believing and hoping and basking in the blessing of God. He knows that he's talked to God all those 21 years, right? He's never worshiped him. And that's where a lot of people are. There's tons of people out there who, because of the chaos in the house, are not worshiping God. Right? And God is telling them, go back to the house of God. And the house of God is where Abraham met God as well. He's finally becoming Israel, a birthright priest. But before you can build the altar, God further says, Hasiru et Elohei Hanechar, remove the foreign gods. That's why the Brit Khadashah portion, 1 Corinthians 5, fits so perfectly. He tells Corinth, remove the evil from among you. Hasiru et hayetzer hara mikem. Remove the evil inclination from among you. I don't know if you know this, but we have a specific prayer in the Siddur about the evil inclination. Do y'all read it?
Yes, yes.
Remove that from you. It's also in Yeshua's prayer for the Talmidim. Deliver us from the evil one. Hatzilenu min hara. It's the same word that Jacob used. Deliver me from my brother. Hatzilenu. Do you see it? Jacob had to purge the idols out of his house. He had to be a priest and demand it from them all. They were adults. It's not like he had 12 little kids running around at his feet. They were equal adults in stature. Are you with me?
Yes.
Starting to build their own kingdoms. And he's saying, put the idolatry out of your house. We're going to bury these idols under this tree. And guess what? Mama died.
Yep.
Because she was the one who brought the paganism into the house. And I think we've already talked about that. The Corinthians had to purge unrepentant sin and mixture religion out of Corinth. And this was 2,000 years ago that Corinth is mixing the faith of Yeshua with Greek idolatry. And guess what it was? Some of you might know this if you listened to in times past. I find not a lot of you do. Speaking in tongues. Anybody ever seen, and I've seen it on video, other religions, pagan religions, speaking in tongues? Anybody ever seen it? I have. And that's a big movement in our country today. It has been for about 100 years. You got to shanda, randa, tie my bow tie, fit about a kid, what about Honda? You got to do that. You got to do that or you're not saved. You don't have the Holy Ghost if you don't drive Honda. Corinth was doing that because in the temple on the top of the hill, people who were worshiping whatever Diana, I think, was the Greek god in the temple of Corinth, whatever, but they were high on a gas coming out of that mountain, and they were speaking other languages, and so they were doing it, and the women were cutting their hair short and blurring lines between the sexes, the genders. Hello! Speaking in tongues through demons. Nonsensical stuff or curses in other languages on people, on God's actual people. And they don't realize they're doing it. Corinthian believers wanted to be like the Corinthian pagans. That was the problem. They wanted the supernatural all the time. There's going to be days, and I've said this before, there's going to be days you're going to walk without the sensation of the supernatural. Can you believe it? But if you trust Yahweh, you know that He is with you, even if He's not tickling your, rubbing your neck or something.
Yeah.
You don't feel Him, but He's there. It's by faith. In the Son of God, by the way. So, Yeshua said in Yokhanan 1, you will see heaven opened. And we talked about that last week. And then He goes to a wedding in Cana. I believe that wedding was probably during Rosh Hashanah. And He does His first miracle there. And we commemorate that miracle every week at Shabbat. When we ushered in the Shabbat, the first thing that we do, it was Miriam who told Yeshua to make the wine, right? And the first thing that we do is the woman lights the lights. Then the man takes up the wine and says, Bore pri hagafen, right? Who creates the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua literally created the fruit of the vine in gallons of water at a wedding to start His ministry, His first miracle.
Yeah.
There's so much in that. But it's probably growing roots into your chair just like I am. But that's new creation. Yeshua had just told them, you're going to be transformed. Here's Netanel, an Israelite without guile, right? And that's what we all need to be. So, let's wrap up. Hatzileni na, deliver me. That's when we meet Yeshua. He rescues us from our sin. And because, isn't it Jacob's own sin that got him into that mess 21 years ago in the first place? So God is delivering him from his sin. Yeshua wrestles with us in our true identity. He wounds us to heal us. If you've never been disciplined by God, I have literally, I don't care what anybody says, I know God literally smacked me upside the head one night with an iron bar. Bam! I see, I'm sorry. Anybody ever have an episode like that where you know it was the hand of God's discipline on you and you just have to admit it? He renames us. We symbolize that in this congregation by people taking on a new name, chosen sometimes by someone around them or by themselves. Right? That's prophesied in the prophets. They will take on the name of Israel. Right? All the nations will. He reveals the Father to us. Yeshua did not kick Daddy off the throne and take over. He reveals and honors and glorifies his Father, and he stands next to him. He purges us and renews the camp. He cleans the idolatry out of the camp. If that hasn't happened, that's where a lot of people in this country are. And the process they need to go through, but they have to be broken first. And so when you're praying for your loved ones, you have to realize you are praying that they be broken, and you have to realize that when they are broken, it's for God's purposes. It's hard to watch.
Yes, it is.
Especially if they're stubborn. And they go through it over and over and over. Right? One day, Yeshua reconciles us with people. One day, in spite of how impossible it looks right now, one day, Jews and Muslims are not going to be Muslims anymore. Jews and Arabs are going to be brothers. And in some cases, they already are. I have Arabic brothers and friends. Right? He purges the camp and he renews it. He gets rid of idolatry. I'm talking about Yeshua, because that's who compelled Jacob to do that. He calls us to his holiness. And Yeshua is the man of God in the night who wrestled with Jacob. He's the visible, touchable, tangible word of Yahweh in flesh. And it's in him that we meet God face to face. And through him that we will one day literally look God in the face. That's what people don't understand. Is when we get to heaven, finally, that what did Yeshua say at the beginning of his ministry? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. We're finally going to see God the Almighty.
Yes.
So, there might be people in here or watching who are in the Jacob stage. They're afraid. They feel alone. The passage that I was going to read said Jacob was alone. And in order to get you to a place where you finally break and commit and start to worship and stay with God, he has to get you to a point where you feel utterly alone. I was literally on a submarine and thought nobody that I loved me back. Wasn't hearing from anybody. And God loved me. He meets you in the dark where your sins are committed. He wrestles with you. He compels you to go back to the house of God. And he renames you. He is the man that will not let you go until he blesses you. Amen.
Amen.